We are now through week 6 of the high school football season. 3 weeks to go. The race to the finish line, the race to the postseason is on. A lot of teams like their position heading in here, but a lot of teams, their playoff hopes are dwindling. But if we've learned anything from college football, if Vanderbilt can beat Alabama, Mitch, anything is possible.
Yep, we're in the final 3 weeks of the year, so it's the crunch time. So crazy things can happen. We've seen it happen before, and boy, we're ready to see it happen again.
All right, let's jump in. Let's see what the crystal ball says.
Talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into View from the West podcast, the podcast covering Illinois high school football on the western side of the state of Illinois. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, joined once again, as always, by everyone's favorite QB1, Mitch Stormer. Mitch, how you doing today?
You know I'm good.
You're good,
still,
but you sound pensive.
Well, there's the listeners are going to find out why as we progress through the show. Kind of said it in the open here that there's a lot still hanging in the balance. We've got some teams that have already punched their ticket, teams that have already either clinched a share or certainly in the driver's seat to win their divisions. But boy, there are a lot of teams that are sitting at 2 wins and 3 wins, and I think this is a statewide thing. You know, there are more teams trying to get in or still have a chance to get in than there are maybe teams that are already secure. So I think there's going to be some wild stuff happening. So just kind of putting these notes together for this week and looking at what each team and each conference that we cover has left in the last 3 weeks. We're going to try and predict it, but I can guarantee we'll be wrong about some of it because, you know, it's just so hard these last 3 weeks.
Well, if and when we're wrong, just come tweet at us and yell at Mitch because it's always it's always his fault. But no, yeah, like you said, we're gonna stare into the crystal ball and we're gonna see what the future holds for some of these teams, for a lot of these teams here. Some I think will be positive. I think some teams will be hyping up, but there's some reality, Mitch, that's coming soon as the season winds down, the reality is gonna hit that some teams are gonna fall short. It's inevitable. So but we focus on the positive here on View from the West podcast. So we'll try to hype up the teams that deserve it and really try to sell some teams on how their playoff chances are right there and they can make that run.
You know, and the flip side of that is we're going to see some teams that historically have been in the playoffs not make it, but we're going to see teams that haven't been in a while get in, and that's exciting. That's fun.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about it down the way. But there's one conference in particular where there's almost been a changing of the guard all the way through, where there's, multiple teams that are flip-flopped and, some are on the top that we thought would be maybe a little lower and they've made their move. They've impressed us this year. So I can't wait to get into it. So before we get into all of that fun, Mitch, you know who we got to thank for all the stuff, all the goodness that is View from the West podcast.
Yeah, I sure do. I know it. You know it. The fans know it. Tonight's episode is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. And may I add, Greg, maybe somebody's looking for an alternative uniform, like, say, a Farmington, who went to Breedlove's for those beautiful black uniforms they had on this week. Breedlove's provides all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of the cost you're probably used to. They offer brand names such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com for more information.
Well, when we're speaking of Breedloves and you're talking about online team stores, how about the View from the West online store? Mitch, it's back. It's open again for a short period of time here, just in time for the playoff push. So thanks to our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, you can now find View from the West t-shirts, hoodies, plus we now have quarter zips and hats that are available. We still have our rivalry merch, which is also on sale. That was on sale at the beginning of the year. You can find that link to the store right now. It's in this episode description, or it's the pin post over on X. I encourage you to go out, check out the online store, grab your gear before it's too late. The shop will close at the end of the day on Sunday, October 13th. So we thank you for your support. Head on out, find something you like, and, be rocking that View from the West gear. We're excited. Mitch, I know you're wearing it right now. Talk about the View from the West quarter zip. We also got some hats to sample before they went for sale. And man, I love it. That quarter zip, I was wearing it. I've worn it the last about 3 Friday nights. It's perfect. It's great.
Yeah, the ones that are in the shop now, kind of that two-tone sleeves are different color. I love that look. I'm definitely going to get one of those.
Yep.
But yeah, all the options, as you mentioned, all of the, if you missed out on the rivalry shirts, if you want one that just has our logo on it to support the show, or you have a favorite, one of the sayings that we have, there's something for everybody. Christmas is coming up, Greg. Let's not forget, we're pretty close to Christmas. So, might have to get my kids something while the shop's open.
I love that idea. My dad was rocking the run, touchdown, repeat. I told him that's a nod. A lot of that is Marquette inspired. The Marquette High School, the Marquette Academy offense that I've been watching for years, and they've done it very effectively. So there's that shirt and plenty of other ones as well. So, and I should mention, if anyone has ideas for team merch, let us know. In our partnership with Breedloves, we're looking for creative outlets for your team. If we plan to continue to do this online store. Hopefully we can keep it going year over year. So bring your ideas and we'll see if we can make a t-shirt for your team and, make it happen. So we're just looking to, add to the fun and excitement that is, high school football and high school athletics. So, well, Mitch, you can find us. I mentioned you can find the link on the podcast description here or on our X account. We're on X, we're on YouTube, and we're on Instagram. I'm going to get those YouTube, if they're not already up when you're listening to this, I'm going to get those Polo highlights up very quickly in Polo's big win over Milledgeville. We'll get those up there. We also got highlights from teams from across the area throughout the season. Monmouth, Roseville. We got Rock Ridge highlights. I got some Princeville highlights from earlier this year. Of course, we got the Quincy highlights and their win over Moline back in week, I believe, 4. And speaking of content, Mitch, we got to plug the Instant Reacts podcast. It was our week 6 recap. We had to bring in Kyle Kampmeyer this week from NUICfootball.com because there were 2 really big matchups in the Northwest Upstate Illini. We'll talk about them in a second, and we'll look ahead for those teams. But of course, we also had the cast of characters. Brian Stocking was in the house. The WQAD crew was in and out. So a big week. Mitch, you and I really took a deep dive into week 6. We really recapped everything in that episode. So I encourage everyone to go back, listen to those recaps on what happened on week 6. If you haven't already, get yourself all caught up because this week it's all eyes forward.
Yeah. We're not talking about week 6 anymore. So yeah, like Greg said, if you missed that show or you want to get a quick recap, we didn't have everything at the time of record, but we had enough. So yeah, we're looking ahead here. So Instant Reacts, go check it out.
Yeah. And I will say, being that it's Instant Reacts, and the, the kind of spontaneity that is the Instant Reacts, it's a little bit out of order. So we kind of started with the Northwest Upstate Illini because there were some really big games in that conference. And then we kind of work our way backwards through the Three Rivers, then the Lincoln Land, and then we almost kind of end with the Western Big Six. So a little bit in reverse order. So for our Western Big Six fans, I encourage you to listen to the whole thing, of course. But if you have to get to your conference in particular, maybe skip, scroll to the end just a little bit. But Mitch, we never encourage anyone to skip parts of the podcast.
Sometimes, sometimes we got to switch things up depending on the importance of the week. So normally the big guys in the Western Big Six get all the love up front, but sometimes we gotta switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So like we said, we're all eyes forward here on week 7, 8, and 9. It is absolutely the home stretch to the race to the finish, whatever cliche you want to throw at it. It's this time. It's go time right now.
Throw out the records, Greg. Throw them out.
That's right. All of the cliches. So we're not, like I said, the only reason we're going to look backwards, we got 2 points of business to look back on, and then we're moving forward. Of course, Mitch, we got to start with our Breedloves Player of the Week. And Mitch, it's a little bit of a history-making winner here. For the first time, a View from the West Breedloves Player of the Week helmet will be headed to a player from 8-man football. Congratulations to Gus Mumford. I got the privilege of seeing him and the Polo Marcos up close on Friday night, walking the sidelines. And Gus Mumford really impressed me in a huge rivalry game here. Mitch, give us the numbers.
Yeah, our guy Gus, we've been talking him up for weeks. 141 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns, 141 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, throwing some 2-point conversions in there too. Again, you know, putting up those type of numbers and certainly couldn't be more balanced than that in the rivalry game against an undefeated team. You got the Battle of the Blacktop Trophy up for grabs. What a performance here from Gus Mumford. Had some great performances this week across all the games or I should say across all the conferences and players that we cover. But this was a big marquee matchup at 8-man. So yeah, big game for Gus Mumford, and congratulations to him on the helmet.
Yep, absolutely. Walking the sidelines, I left that game really impressed with the way he led that offense, with the way they have multiple weapons, but the way he was able to kind of lead the charge and seemed like just a real, leader on the field through his play and through his, the way he carried himself. So really impressed with the way he led that team. Great win for Polo, like you said. So congratulations, Gus Mumford. For the first time ever, an 8-man player is getting the Breedlove's Player of the Week helmet award. So that helmet on its way to Polo. Very exciting stuff. And one more point of order, Mitch. Of course, we got to hand out our game of the week. And how about Farmington and Macomb? 2 undefeated teams, and this one went down to the wire. It lived up to the billing.
Yeah, this was a fantastic battle between the top 2 teams in the LLC Large. As you mentioned, both teams going undefeated, or were undefeated heading into this contest. Macomb led early, 14-0. The Farmers stormed back. They took a 20-14 lead. Bombers would tie this game early in the 4th at 20, but every week I am not. It's one of those things where you can't believe it keeps happening, but you're not surprised by it.
You're speechless. Kick, literally, you're speechless.
I just don't know what to say anymore. A blocked kick. Normally it's punts. This time it's an extra point that would have given the Bombers the lead. Carter Lambin for the Farmers once again. I think that's like his 8th blocked kick in the last 2 years. Preserves the tie. Would go to overtime. Our defending player of the week, Lane Wheelwright, does his thing, calls his own number, gets into the end zone on their first possession, and the game would come to an end quickly after that as Farmington's Jack Grunwald seals the game with a interception, and the Farmers get the.
Yeah, absolutely. The Farmers get the win. Congratulations to Farmington. Huge win for them. Just a great battle. Hats off to Macomb as well. A really good battle between 2 really good football teams. That's definitely game of the week for us.
Yeah, definitely. So View from the West game of the week is sponsored by Nate Neighbor of Modern Woodmen of America. From protection to savings to retirement, contact Nate Neighbor today to put together your financial game plan. He's always just a call away at 309-233-2656. Modern Woodmen, touching lives, securing futures.
All right, Mitch. Well, let's get into the playoff snapshot. You have been all over it on X. I gotta give you credit. Got to make sure the listeners know here. In the last couple weeks, we've now created the graphic. You've created the graphic. The ticket punched into the IHSA postseason. Mitch, I love it. I know the listeners, the followers on X, they love it as well. It's just a really exciting way to just introduce new teams who are making the playoffs. So good job on you. I love it. But let's give us the playoff snapshot. Who are those teams that have gotten that graphic?
Tell you what, Greg, I got some big plans for when playoffs come out. We'll get to that later.
Oh, I'm excited.
Let's look at the teams here, and I hope I have everyone right. Please correct me if I missed somebody here, Greg. These are teams that have had those ticket punched graphics already. This is obviously meaning that they have 6 wins at the moment. From the Western Big Six, that's Quincy. You've got Lena Winslow from the NUIC. You've got Monmouth Roseville out of the track. LLC has 3. You've got Princeville and Stark County on the small side. You've got Farmington on the large side. And then 8-man teams that have 6 wins. That's Polo and West Central.
Yep, correct. So I think we got everybody there. So those are our 6-win teams. They're automatic qualifiers. they've gotten the graphic treatment. Very exciting. We got teams who have qualified for the playoffs. They got that 5th win. That's almost assuredly a lock these days because 4-win teams are going to get in. But, it's always nice to get that 6th to just secure things, the old traditional way. Who's got 5 wins, Mitch? Who are we looking at here?
All right. NUIC, you've got Dupec and EPC both sitting at 5. You've got Newman and Princeton in the track at 5. The LLC, you've got Rushville Industry on the small side. You've got Elmwood, Brimfield, and Macomb on the large side. And then back to 8-man, you've got Milledgeville, Amboy, and West Carroll.
Okay, there you go. What Ridgewood also has 5 wins.
Yes. See, this is why you're here to correct me when I miss somebody, and I hope I didn't miss anybody else.
No, I think we got it at least. And if we did mess it up, hey, shout at your podcast device and then tweet at or send out a message on X. Get to us, let us know. We'll be listening. So, all right. So, Mitch, do we want to again let people know if they want to go back and hear final scores, hear all the recap from week 6? This episode's a little bit different. We're strictly looking ahead here because we really want to dive into what's left for teams, what that playoff outlook really looks like. Again, the crystal ball. So if you want to hear results from last Friday, I encourage you to go listen to the Instant Reacts podcast. All right. Are we jumping into the Western Big 6 week 7, the games that are in front of us?
Yeah, let's start there. Let's still keep it tunnel visioned here for this week, just so we can kind of preview what's ahead at least this week, and then we'll expand back out again, looking at the last 3 weeks of the season here.
All right, well, here we go. Week 7 for all teams in our area. We'll start in the Western Big 6. We got Sterling at Quincy, United Township at Moline, Galesburg at Rock Island, Geneseo hosting Dalton Thorn Ridge, who's 2-4 currently. So, Mitch, I'll go to you first. Where do you look here for the game that catches your eye?
It's Quincy and Sterling, right?
I think so. There's one other one, but yeah.
Okay, I'm going there. I think Sterling's riding a high here. 4 straight wins, 3 straight games that they've allowed 6 or less. And it's going to take that sort of defensive effort. I will be honest and say I don't think offensively Sterling has the weapons to keep up with the Quincy attack. And that's again more of a credit to what Quincy brings to the table than anything. So I'll be looking for that Golden Warrior defense to play the same way they've been playing the last 3 weeks, because they're going to have to slow Braden Little, Jarius Rice, this entire Blue Devil offense, slow the game down. It was a close game last year, if you remember, Greg. They're going to have to play the same way.
Yep. The other game that kind of catches my eye, United Township at Moline. And we'll talk more about what these teams, what United Township in particular has to do to kind of get to that 5th win. But this is certainly a huge game for them. They got Moline a year ago in a big win for Nick Welch and that Panther squad. So I look at this UT.
It's a must win for UT. We'll get into that in a minute. It's a must win for UT.
Yeah. So I think that, like we said in the top of the show, if Vandy can beat Alabama, hey, nothing is off the table. So this is one of those games.
Look, I don't want to compare those 2 situations because
I'm saying anything is possible, Mitch.
I've been really impressed with how UT has played this year.
Yes.
So yeah, it's going to be a great game.
Hey, and in similar fashion, let's not forget the Vanderbilt played pretty well against Mizzou earlier in the season, and Mizzou was pretty good until this week. So
Mizzou stinks.
All right, we're getting off the rails here, but my point being is, I think, like you said, it's a must-win for UT. It would take an upset over. I would consider it an upset based on the standings here, and I think that it's a game to watch. It's a game to follow. Now, Moline comes in playing good football, and they're motivated by last year, right? Because UT got them. So it's a game that catches my eye because I think it could be, at the end of the day, maybe one of the tighter battles in the Western Big 6 this week. So I want to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, and Galesburg and Rock Island, obviously 2 programs just not having a great season. So which one of these two teams can come out with a win? And then you've got Geneseo with the team like you mentioned, Dalton Thornridge. I don't believe they're very good. Could be wrong. But if Geneseo can lock in that 4th win of the year, I think they'll be sitting pretty to get to 5.
Yep. All right. Well, that's a tease ahead. Listen to, another few minutes and we'll get into what every team needs to do to get to that 5th win or more. But that's the look at the Western Big Six in week 7. Let's look at the Three Rivers Athletic Conference, Mississippi side of things for week 7. Kewanee is at Sherrard, Mendota hosting Princeton, Monmouth Roseville at Hall. So again, I think we had a really big marquee week a couple weeks ago in the Three Rivers. This one does these games seem a little predictable to me. I think that it's unfortunate. A part of why I say that is that Sherrard's pretty banged up. I think that, they got a lot. They're missing some pieces. They obviously struggled against Monmouth Roseville last week, which I think we kind of expected because Monmouth Roseville is playing really good football right now. But, I'm interested that Kewanee's got to go on the road. They got to get the job done. This is one of those wins that they need if they're going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I think so too. They played well against Mendota last week. So I agree with you here. I think these are all kind of predictable. I think Kewanee, Princeton, and Monrose will walk away victorious this week. So, yeah, still some things to be worked out. And again, hate to keep saying it, that we'll get into in a minute. But this week, I don't think there's too much trouble here.
All right, some intriguing matchups in the Three Rivers Athletic Conference on the Rock side of things. Erie Prophetstown, Erie Prophetstown hosting Orion. You have Riverdale at Sterling Newman, and the big one, I think the matchup that we've kind of been waiting to see when the new conference was kind of drawn up. Mercer County at Rock Ridge, longtime rivals in a lot of sports, haven't played in football since 2013. And here they are again. They played in the 2013 playoffs, so not even the regular season, but here they are again.
Who's going to call this game for WRMJ?
I actually thought about that the other day. I don't know. That may have to be a text message to Ty and see what he says. Maybe they do something like Jim's in the booth and Ty's on the sideline.
Ty's on the side,
yeah. Or maybe they're in the booth together. I don't know. And then somebody else does sideline. I don't know.
Yeah, if they're split up, I mean, there's, like we just said, there's 3 good games that all have some meaningful results to them. But I'm trying to decide if I'm more excited to see that game, which I think I am, Mercer County going to Rock Ridge, but been surprised by both Riverdale and Newman. Maybe more surprised by Riverdale with where they're sitting through 6 weeks. I don't know that they can get past Newman, but I think it's enough to make it an intriguing game. And Newman grabbed a share of this division last week. They could get it outright if they win this game. Obviously, they've got that cross division game in week 9 with Monmouth Roseville, which will be a lot of fun. And then you've got EP at Orion. EP reeling from a loss to Riverdale, but they're coming off 2 weeks ago where they had that last second win against Mercer County. So Orion having a down year. Pretty much a must-win game for EP's hopes to get into the postseason.
Yeah, I think when you start looking at it, it's a big game for Erie Prophetstown. Like we said, Orion's season hasn't gone the way that they hoped. But if Orion can play a full 4 quarters, right, and they gotta maintain on defense, and it's tough with the numbers they got, but they have some athletic players, some players really working hard, and the results haven't been there. But if they could put together a full 4 quarters here, I'm curious to see how this one can go. On the same side, I think you've seen kind of the, hit or miss from Erie Prophetstown, right? They've had some impressive wins and they've had some, disappointing losses. So I think somewhere in the middle there, if they're fully healthy, if they're, really doing what they do best, they're a tough team to beat any week. But that's an interesting matchup to see kind of which teams show up.
Yep, I totally agree.
Yeah. For Mercer County at Rock Ridge, like I mentioned, first time they're meeting up since 2013. That was in Aledo. It was a Mercer County win, 26-20. can't remember if it went into overtime, might have went into OT. And as Jim Taylor said on Sportsline this past week, maybe one of the best games ever played at George Pratt Memorial Field was that game in 2013. That's pretty high praise because the Alito football history is rich at George Pratt Memorial. So to get that kind of praise is high. That game, I think, should be a ton of fun just for the atmosphere alone. I think the gameplay will be exciting, but the atmosphere is going to be great. Mitch, it's a new trophy. We called for it, and these schools delivered. The county line clash. It's a trophy game. We love it. Somebody's going to be hoisting a trophy at the end of the night, and that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, we love that. Yeah, we joked about who's going to be calling this game, but this will definitely be the game that I'm probably going to be listening to and focusing on the most, because just with everything you just mentioned, not only the history, but still the intrigue here in the conference.
Yeah, I think for Mercer County, it was interesting hearing Coach Matlick's discussion with Ty Taylor again on Sportsline. Ty said it, and Coach Matlick kind of agreed that this might have been last week's game against Newman, might have been Mercer County's best effort this season. And it came in a loss. And then obviously they've had some wins along the schedule, but against a Newman team that plays such good defense, they're playing well offensively, that he thought that this was a great effort from his kids. So even in a loss, what kind of momentum did they build? We'll see. Going into a game against a tough Rock Ridge team, it'll test Mercer County's defense, right? With Schweigen and the dual threat athlete that he is, their defense will be tested. On the offensive side of the ball for Mercer County, they really got to limit turnovers. They got to take care of the football. They got to do those little things correct. They got to play a really good football game. But hey, it's a rivalry. Throw the records out the window. Yeah. Am I right, Mitch Stormer?
Yeah, you got that right. And they had a chance against Newman and threw a pick six. So like you mentioned, limit that. And again, that situation, anything can happen, but limit things like that, and you're going to be right there in it with Rock Ridge.
Yep, and Riverdale at Newman. I think that this Riverdale squad is building up a lot of positive momentum. They'll certainly be tested this week. This offense for Riverdale will be tested against a really strong Newman defense. Can Newman do? I look back at what they did against Erie Prophetstown early in the year when they go to the ground and they're so strong in the trenches. Can Riverdale handle that? That's what I want to see, because man, what Newman can do, just up front to you can really be tough for any team to manage. So that'll be one thing I'll be watching in that matchup for sure. But some intriguing matchups there. Let's get into the Lincoln Land Conference, the large school side of things for week 7. Illini West hosting Bureau Valley, Macomb at Elmwood Brimfield, Anawan Weathersfield at Farmington, West Hancock at Knoxville, and LVC at Macon Meridian. So non-conference game there. Meridian only sitting at 1-5. So an opportunity there for LVC. But what other games here, Mitch, are you looking at?
Well, there's two.
Okay.
One, I think Illini West and BV is a must-win for both of those teams.
Okay. Yep.
I'll save that for a little bit later.
Okay.
Macomb at Elmwood Brimfield. Macomb coming off that loss to Farmington, that really tough loss. Elmwood Brimfield sitting at 5-1 as well.
And they're coming off the loss to Elmwood Brimfield or to Farmington a week before that.
Right. So you've got a pair of 5-1 teams that are probably jockeying for that second place in the large division. Obviously, two teams that are going to go to the playoffs. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So definitely should be a great game. Should be a lot of good offense in that one. Intrigued by Anawan Weathersfield at Farmington. Yep. I don't know how much of a fighter's chance the Titans are going to have here if they're still not fully healthy. Even if they were, Farmington's just been so good. So this is a fun crossover game between two really, really good programs. So yeah, this should be a fun week that we see some jockeying of positions in the standings.
Yep. Looking, a little farther down in the standings, West Hancock at Knoxville. Which one of those teams can grab a little momentum late in the season? I know that quarterback Varner from West Hancock had a huge week. He was definitely one of our helmet watch nominees.
Yeah, Bryce Varner, 426 passing yards. I think that was a school record. 5 touchdowns through the air and added 1 on the ground. So yeah, he was right there. Great performance from Bryce Varner this week.
So see if he can continue to build on that. And also for Knoxville, the season hasn't gone the way they wanted to, and not the way we're not used to this in Knoxville, to see them kind of struggling the way they are. But can they build a little positive momentum in this one? Yeah, that Anawan Wethersfield Farmington one, you mentioned it. 2 really good programs going up against each other. But a part of me looks at the size differential. I think being that it's the large school Farmington, 3A school, the best team at this very moment, the best team in the conference across the board in the small or the large side. Anawan Wethersfield is having a good year despite some injuries. They're sitting at 4-2, but man, this might be a tough matchup for them. Just looking across the way here. And like you mentioned, the Macomb at Elmwood Brimfield and Illini West and Bureau Valley, 2 matchups that I'm really interested to follow. A lot of playoff implications, I believe. So we'll get to that in a second. But let's look at the LLC small school side of things for week 7. You have, again, Anawan Wethersfield at Farmington as a crossover, A-Town at Havana, United at South Fulton, Rova Williamsfield hosting Rushville Industry. And the big one on the LLC small school side, most likely for the conference championship, for the division crown here, Stark County going on the road to Princeville. That's the one I want to start with. What are your thoughts on that one?
I think we're going to learn a lot about Princeville in this game. Yep. They're 6-0. They squeaked by Havana and have not played their best competition yet.
Yep. 3
of the best teams in the conference, they play the final 3 weeks, and they start with the defending champs and a fellow undefeated team in Stark County. So I'm intrigued to see how Princeville stocks up.
Yeah.
I think the Rebels are going to be too much in this one. I've been really, really impressed with their playmakers week in and week out. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see how, if Princeville is the real deal, they can win. I mean, obviously they can win. I haven't seen them do it against a great team yet. So this will be their first chance to do that.
It's absolutely a week for Princeville to prove themselves. You're absolutely right. And I think this matchup really comes down to looking at which team can stop the other team's playmakers consistently, right? This Stark County defense is going to be tested against Jake Williams and Jet Benningfield and the way that they attack the way the Princes attack. And for Princeville, can you stop Steelman, Orwig, Chris Barnwell, that kind of multi-dimensional offense that they have rolling along for the Rebels? I think that's where it comes down to. You got to make plays against the playmakers, right? So I want to see how that plays out. And looking down the way, big matchup for Rova Williamsfield. They host Rushville Industry. Rushville Industry's playing really good football. They're sitting at 5-1. I think if Rova Williamsfield wants to make a statement here, they want to kind of get back into things, this would be a huge win for them.
Absolutely. I was just kind of looking back at the defenses here in a small side. And okay, let me ask you this. If you had to guess in the Lincoln Land small side, which defense has given up the least points?
In the Lincoln Land small, defense given up the least amount of points without even really looking at it, I would go with Stark County. Okay.
They are second. Anawan Wethersfield.
Okay.
And that's with giving up 34 to Havana. And I was just, again, I was more so kind of intrigued by the Princeville and the Stark County defenses as kind of a thing to watch for in that game. Both of those defenses are really good, but then it just caught my eye that Anawan Wethersfield led the conference pretty significantly. So yeah, I don't know. I just found it interesting, but
no, that is interesting because I think that when you've talked about kind of how they've had to make adjustments on the offense to find production, but defensively, that's probably it's been a huge help for them, I'm sure.
Yeah. And they'll have to play well against Farmington.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That'll be a huge test for that defense. but it's, at least you have that, knowledge in the back of your mind. You've done things well so far.
Yep.
All right. So anything else here, Mitch, that kind of catches your eye? Like I said, the Roval Williamsfield Rushville Industry one, that's a game that we'll talk more about kind of what Rova needs to do, what Roval Williamsfield needs to do. But, this would be a huge start for them to kind of knock off a team in Rushville Industry they're on a roll. They won 5 in a row.
Yeah. Really impressed with the Rockets. So, yep, we'll save that for a couple minutes.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. Well, let's get into the Northwest Upstate Illini. A big week a week ago. Lena Winslow makes a statement, big win over Dupec. Again, go back and check out the Instant Reacts podcast. You can hear all about it. We brought in Kyle Kampmeyer from NUICfootball.com to get his reaction to that one because it was an impressive win. Lena Winslow, they're tested again this week. The Eastland Pearl City will host Lena Winslow. So that's another intriguing matchup there in the NUIC. You have Dakota hosting Galena. Fulton are on the road to Dupec. Morrison at Stockton. And you have the non-conference game. Forreston is at Hazel Green Southwestern, which I believe is the co-op that brings in East Dubuque, who we covered several years back when they were playing full IHSA football. So interesting crossover there.
Let's see. I think I said this a little bit on the Instant Reacts. I want to be intrigued by EPC hosting Lee Win, but I don't think I am. I don't think I am.
Yeah,
just
I hear
because it's not a disservice to. I hope it's not to EPC because they're going to the playoffs. They've had a great season, but when you have a Lee Win team coming off a bye week where they obviously didn't play, going into the Dupec game where I thought Dupec would win, absolutely did not see a running clock situation ever coming into the fold. I'm not going to bet against Lee Win. I'm just not going to do it. So again, I want to be intrigued by that. I just can't get myself there. I do think EPC is going to sit pretty well when it comes at the end of the season, but I think Morrison and Stockton are two teams jockeying for a playoff spot.
Yep.
I give the edge to Stockton at home. They played so well against Forreston this week. But Morrison did against Forreston too. So maybe that's just your measuring stick. So, but either way, I think that game, it's certainly Morrison has to win this one. Like they don't have a choice not to win this one if they want to get in the playoffs, because I don't think they'll make it if they don't. But
okay. Yep.
Should be a great game at again, my favorite field that we cover.
Whoa, your favorite. You're just gonna throw that out there, huh?
That can't be a surprise. I've talked up that field for years.
No, I know you have, but I didn't realize that's the top of the tops of anyone.
There's obviously better like facilities, but
well,
it's the ambiance.
I get
it. The ambiance of it all.
I totally get it. I love Stockton. I think you also love the color combo and that field together.
Here's the thing. I played in 40 high school games.
Okay.
I remember going to Stockton my freshman year. So one of the first games of that 40, more than more recent ones. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
No, it is a beautiful.
Stockton has a special place in my heart.
It's a beautiful place, and I'm hoping they're in the playoff mix because it's a beautiful place to see a playoff game for sure when you get later in the year. So that's the game that stands out to me. Morrison at Stockton does Morrison have what it takes? This has been, I think, I don't know, not fully disappointing, but I think we kind of thought they'd be higher in the standings at this point for sure. So I think, can that Morrison team that we've seen with all the talent, can they make a statement win here? I think it would be huge for them, right? Like you talked about it, looking ahead, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think that they've proven they can win games like this. It just something hasn't fully clicked this season yet.
Yeah, I think when the season gets over and you'll look back at that Galena game and you'll want that game back. If Morrison was going to this game sitting at 4-2, it's a whole different conversation.
Yep.
And now it's different. And I think maybe if Now Morrison's banged up, right? They just lost one of their leading backs. But if they were to play Morrison and Galena again here, in 7, 8 week 7, 8, or 9, Morrison would put up a better fight. So yeah, they can right that ship though if they win the Stockton here this week.
Yep. Quick side tangent, Mitch. We just discovered recently that although the Morrison traditional helmet is gone from Morrison, there is another team that carries the mantle with a red helmet with the white wings on it. That would be that of the Centralia Orphans down in Southern Illinois. I just saw these highlights today, sent them to you immediately. And, I think, what was your reaction?
I mean, hey, go Orphans. I did a Google search after that, and I didn't look at what years these pictures were from, but those might be new helmets. So I don't know how long they've adopted those wings, but it's a great look on any school. So yeah, shout out to the Orphans for keeping the tradition.
Yeah. Now, Mitch, I do want to ask before we move along, you've had several weeks now. I think this would be going into 7 weeks of being able to process the new helmet. And we had your, eulogy for the farewell to the old wings of Morrison. What are your thoughts on the helmet? I've never really asked you. So it's a Western Michigan type of Bronco Mustang on the side, just to clarify for everybody. It's still a red helmet, shiny red with the white decal.
Yeah, so I think I might have tweeted this out once that it's a fine helmet. I actually don't dislike the helmet. It's just when you compare it to the wings, it doesn't hold up as well. Now we've heard some rumblings and rumors that they're going to have new uniforms next year, so maybe it'll be a whole new look. I personally would love to see Morrison bring back the blue trim. So if they can incorporate that a little bit with a new helmet, it might give a whole new look. But for the moment, I just, I'm glad it lives on in Centralia because it's a fine helmet. It just doesn't hold up to the wings. That's all.
Yep. I hear you. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. And I agree. You read my mind. I was thinking about bringing back the blue trim. That was always a nice touch to those uniforms. Just added a little bit to them. So
they brought in gray, and that was awful for a couple of years.
I do remember that.
And then
I would
really
text you
back. Oh, it just hurt my heart.
I would text you pictures every week. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And they scaled back a little bit, maybe a little bit too much. So yeah, bring back some blue trim and that new helmet. It might come back around.
Well, let's look at 8-man, and then we'll really get into the playoff picture. That's where we're going to have a lot of fun here. All right, in the 8-man IAFA North Division, Ashton Franklin Center at Kirkland Hiawatha, Alden Hebron at Hanover River Ridge, Milledgeville at South Beloit, Rockford Christian Life at Polo, West Carroll at Orangeville. That'll be on Saturday. In the West Division, we have Ridgewood at Bushnell Prairie City. You have Flanagan Cornell Woodland at West Central, Galva at West Prairie, and Peoria Heights at Amboy. So, looking through the list here, I think, again, not a lot of marquee matchups like we'd seen, especially when you're talking about Ridgewood versus Amboy, and then you had Polo versus Milledgeville. And so not as many marquee matchups, but still some interesting things here. One that stands out to me in the West Division is Flanagan Cornell Woodland at West Central. West Central sitting undefeated at 6-0, but have they really been tested yet? I think they're going to get tested here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, West Central put up 80 this past week. Pretty impressive stuff there as they sit undefeated. But yeah, they've got some bigger games coming up as we get towards the end of the year here. South Beloit's 4-1 or 5-1, right? That'll be a big game for Milledgeville.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
I know South Beloit was 4-1. I don't know if they won last week, and I'm not going to take the airtime to look that up.
They're at 5-1. South Beloit's 5-1 right now. Yep. So yeah, you're right. That is a marquee matchup.
That's the coverage I provide. I don't want to look it up. But I knew they're 4-1. You got to give me credit there. So I'll, if Milledgeville can bounce back on the road, I think that'd be great for them. So, West Carroll at Orangeville, I think is intriguing. Orangeville trying to get in, trying to sneak into the playoffs, and West Carroll sitting there at 5-1 too. So yeah, it should be another fun week in 8, man.
Yep. All right. Well, one more matchup to kind of watch for down the way in the South Division of 8-man football. This week you'll have Martinsville, who's 6-0, going up against Pawnee, who's 6-0. So I think you'll learn a little bit there, a little bit more there about how the seedings are going to shake out, depending on how that one goes. So that's one to follow as well. So let's take a look at the I-8FA playoff picture. We'll kind of see who's in, and then we'll kind of look at one team in particular from our area and what their path to the playoffs look like. We'll then get into 11-man, and we'll talk about the crystal ball, Mitch. We'll see what teams have left, what we project, who has the path, what teams are, kind of hanging on by a thread, what teams are in kind of a power position to make that playoff run. So here we go. Let's look at I-8FA playoff picture first. We'll start. Thank you to Kyle Kampmeyer, NUICfootball.com, for this information. There are 10 teams. It's a 16-team field in 8-man. There are 10 teams that have locked up a playoff spot. So we'll read through them here. Polo's 6-0. They're in. Pawnee at 6-0. West Central also undefeated. Martinsville at 6-0. You have 5-win teams with Amboy, Ridgewood, Milledgeville, West Carroll, South Beloit, and Milford-Sisna Park. So those are the teams that are in, which leaves 6 slots left. When we're looking at that path to the playoffs, there's one team that's hanging on. They'd have to get some wins here, but it's Orangeville. So Orangeville's sitting at 3-3. Mitch, let's talk through what they have left in their schedule.
Yeah, so this week we just mentioned that they play West Carroll. Week 8 they'll have AFC, and then in week 9 they will finish with a big game against Polo.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I think that their playoff hopes might hang in the balance against West Carroll this week. If they get that win, I think that there's a good chance they win against AFC. That gets them to 5. And then really the Polo matchup wouldn't really be of significance. They'd still be in. But I think it hangs in the balance this week. Am I right?
Yeah, you want to be 5. You want to have your 5 wins secured going into that Polo game. So yeah, I think that's spot on. They got to win this one against the Thunder.
This episode of View from the West podcast is brought to you by Simulation Sports. In addition to golf simulators and batting cages, Simulation Sports provides golf club repair, custom fittings for driver shafts, and even private lessons for golf, baseball, and softball. Whether you're looking for a fun group activity or want to fine-tune your skills and equipment, Simulation Sports has something for everyone. Visit their facility at 400 South Main Street in Monmouth, Illinois, or go to thesimulationsports.com to start playing today.
Shouldn't financial advice focus on you? I can help you plan for your financial future, from protection to saving to retirement. I'm Nate Neighbor, your Modern Woodman representative. Call me at 309-233-2656 or find me on the Modern Woodman website.
Get to know your local Modern Woodman representative to plan for your financial future and learn about valuable member benefits. Modern Woodman of America. Touching lives, securing futures. Securities offered through MWA Financial Services, Inc., a wholly owned subsidiary of Modern Woodman of America.
View from the West podcast is also sponsored by the Cupcake Cartel. Gourmet cupcakes that are made to order. Over 40 flavors including wedding cake, lemon blueberry, strawberry milkshake, snickerdoodle, and Oreo. Perfect for weddings, birthdays, showers, fundraisers, or any event. You can find the Cupcake Cartel on Facebook. We thank them for their support.
All right, Mitch, it's time. The reason we're all here, let's peer into the crystal ball. Let's look at what teams have left, what work they need to do, who's in a power position, who's hanging on by a thread, who's going to be in that playoff mix when we're talking Friday night of week 9 and then into that Saturday of the playoff pairings. We just talked about it a little bit on the 8-man side of things, but here we go for 11-man football. We're starting in the Western Big Six. So, Mitch, where do you want to start here? We got our list of teams. Do we want to start with our 3-win programs? That's really where, the discussion to me starts.
Let's start here.
Okay.
In all respect to Galesburg and Rock Island, both with 5 wins or worse, I don't see a path to the playoffs there. Even if Galesburg would win their last 3 games at 4-5, I don't see a way that they get in. So respectfully to Galesburg and Rock Island, we will not cover you in this section of the conversation. So let's start at a team that we were intrigued by this week. Let's start at United Township. They're sitting at 3-3. Okay.
Yep.
They've got Moline this week. They've got Regis, Wisconsin, and then they've got Galesburg. To me, I think Regis is tough. I know Moline is tough, and I think UT will beat Galesburg. To me, my prediction for UT is that they're going to sit at 4-5 after week 9.
Yeah, looking at, I believe the last I saw, Regis was undefeated this season. I don't know what size school they are, but I think they're a very good football team. So you're looking at that one. That's a tough game. When you're looking at the game against Moline, it's a rivalry. It's a huge game. I think, that's where your season your season hangs in the balance between the Moline and the Regis game. Absolutely.
I know if UT, gets the win against Moline, which they certainly could, that changes things a little bit. And then they would flip that to 5-4. So if UT wants a shot, I think this week against Moline is really a must win.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any secret for them or for any UT fans. I think they kind of know that's it's a huge game in a huge situation, huge part of their season. So yeah, I agree. It's not the easiest path in the world, but this UT team, there's talent there. We've seen it kind of growing and getting better as the year goes. If they put it all together, it could be a fun last few weeks for the Panthers.
Let's settle something, Greg, right now. Right?
Okay.
Is East Moline one of the Quad Cities?
They are, absolutely. They're one of the original Quad Cities.
Okay. I agree with you.
That's what
So
when you drive
Bettendorf. That leaves out Bettendorf then, right?
I suppose so. Yes.
It'd be East Moline, Rock Island, Davenport.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you drive in,
curious on your opinion, that's all.
When you drive into East Moline, the sign, the welcome sign into the city says, "We are one of the Quad Cities." So I think that settles it.
Yep. All you gotta do is just put a sign on it with something on it, and that's the end of it.
I mean, Bettendorf is kind of like they're a Johnny come lately. They just kind of showed up, and now all of a sudden they're a Quad City. So yeah, it's definitely 3 on the Illinois side and 1 on the Iowa side.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So there you go. There's the path. There's the path for United Township. They gotta, probably what we would consider pull a couple upsets there, but there's the path to get to the playoffs. How about Geneseo, Mitch? They got Thornridge, a non-conference game this week. That Thornridge team sits at 2-4. So I think that's a winnable game. You have Quincy in week 8, and then you have Rock Island in week 9. So I think compared to United Township, there's a little bit more opportunity here.
Yeah, I think so. I do believe they'll get past Thornridge. I do not think they will against Quincy. And I do think they will get past the struggling Rock Island program and finish at 5-4 and get into the 4A playoffs again this year.
Yep. All right. Those are our 3-win teams. Let's see what we got in 4-win teams. We're talking Sterling and Moline. Let's start with Sterling. They got Quincy this week on the road. Then they got Rock Island and Moline. So they're already at 4. They really need just 1. Last year, they got in with 4 wins, but they, need 1 more to feel probably better about themselves. I think it's possible here because you got that game against Rock Island. And, Rock Island, you got to show up. Sterling has to show up and play a complete football game. But I think that the path for 5 wins is there.
Yeah, that week 9 game, I think, is going to be a really, really good matchup between Sterling and Moline. I do think Quincy wins this week. I do think Sterling wins next week against Rock Island. They'll be sitting. That would give them their 5th win, and they'd be in. I don't see them beating Moline, so I think Sterling will finish at 5-4 and get into the playoffs again this year.
There you go. So you just said Moline. You think Moline over Sterling. So let's look at Moline's path. Moline is sitting at 4-2. They got UT, Galesburg, and Sterling left. I think you just called out one of those games. I think there's a chance they could run the table here.
Yeah. And then what a finish that would be. I do think that Moline wins this week against United Township. I think they will defeat Galesburg, and then I will give the upper hand at the moment. It'll be close, I think, come week 9, but I do think I will give the edge to Moline in week 9, and again put them at 7-2 and on a real hot streak heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I will say that if Moline ends up at 7-2, I think that kind of confirms a lot of what was predicted early in the season. I will admit, I did not predict that, so I was wrong. But a lot of people thought Moline would be the second best, right behind Quincy, and I can see that playing out that way. Sitting at 4-2 right now, but really going on a run here. So, anything else in the Western Big Six, Mitch, or we covered it?
Well, we didn't talk about Quincy, even though they are in.
Yeah.
I do think I have them listed here as going undefeated. I don't know anything about Capital City other than I thought they were undefeated. Max Prep shows them at 4-2. So I'll just say Quincy's going to go undefeated regardless. And be 9-0 heading into the 7-8 playoffs once again.
Yep. That was, I think Shuck predicted 7-0, right? At the beginning of the season. And if Shuck says it, I think that's the law. So
7-0 or 9-0.
Sorry. What did I say? I meant, I think Shuck predicted they were going to go undefeated again this year.
Okay. Yeah. I thought Capital City was undefeated for some reason. I might have just been mixing that up with Regis. So, I don't care who the opponent is, honestly. I'm pretty confident in Quincy, so I'll put them at 9-0. So if those predictions hold up, that would put us at 4 teams from the Western Big Six to get into the postseason.
And that would be Quincy, Moline, Sterling,
and Geneseo.
There you go. Again, I'm still keeping my eye on United Township. Yep. They have, again, a couple games that I think would be considered upsets, but I don't think they're out of the realm of possibility, certainly. So it'll be fun to follow.
Yep.
Let's get into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference Mississippi side of things. Mitch, we'll start with Mendota's 0-6. So even with 3 wins, no playoff hopes here. They have Princeton, Erie, Prophetstown, Mercer County left. You also have a 1-win Hall team, 1-5. They have Monmouth, Roseville, Riverdale, and Rock Ridge left. So 2 really tough games there between Monmouth, Roseville, and Rock Ridge. And Riverdale has proven to be a very formidable opponent as well. So it seems like a tough path for Hall as well. You look at Sherrard sitting at 2-4. Kewanee, Orion, and Riverdale left. What do you think about Sherrard here? 2-4, Kewanee, Orion, Riverdale left.
Yeah, we talked about it when we were talking about week 7 that Sherrard's just been banged up, and that's a little unfortunate. I think the Orion game will be a good matchup between those 2 programs.
Yep.
I'm going to give the edge to Sherrard there. I don't see Sherrard beating Kewanee or Riverdale, so I think Sherrard will finish at 3-6 and miss the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I want to be on the positive side of things. I don't want to dwell on the negative, but there's a chance I think that Sherrard ends up with only 2 wins. I might edge Orion in that matchup with Sherrard.
Okay.
So we'll talk more about Orion in a minute here, but again, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I like the way Riverdale's been playing. I like the way Kewanee's been playing. And then when you look at Orion, I think they're just, they're waiting to play a full football game. So talk about Orion in a minute. But all right, let's look at a team we just mentioned in Kewanee, sitting at 3-3. They got Sherrard, Newman, Orion left. I think there's a couple wins here.
There's a shot at 6-3.
I would agree with that. Yep.
I think they give Newman a battle. I'm going to give Newman the edge for the moment.
Off the top of your head, is that game? Where's that game at? Newman or Kewanee?
It's at one of those 2 schools, Greg.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
I do think Kewanee beats Sherrard. I do think they'll beat Orion in week 9. I think Newman will control that game. And play a blue machine type of game, even against a bigger school. So I'm going to put Kewanee at 5-4. 6-3 certainly possible either way back in the playoffs.
I would agree with that. Yep. I think 5-4 seems like the path for Kewanee here. All right. Let's look at Princeton. Princeton's sitting at 5-1 right now. Mendota, Mercer County, Erie Prophetstown left. Mitch, I think that their hardest game is behind them in Monmouth. I think several of their toughest games are behind them. They've had a pretty tough schedule early in the season. I think they're going 8-1.
Yep, I think that too. Murco could give them maybe some trouble early, but I have been really impressed with Princeton. They certainly had a big win this last week. So yeah, I think they're going to be sitting at 8-1 and going to be a formidable team in 3A.
We'll talk about Murco in a minute. They could be dangerous because they'll be fighting, I think, for their playoff lives. So that could be one where, when a team is, backs against the wall, they got to perform. If they show up, we'll talk about Mercer County in a minute. But yeah, I think that I would still give the edge to Princeton on that one. Then you got Monmouth Roseville, of course, 6-0, having a great season right now. They got Hall, Rockridge, and Newman left. So this week, I think they can get a win. Then they got 2 tough matchups here to wrap up the regular season.
Yeah, I'm squirming in my chair because I wrote that I think they'll be 8-1. I think Monmouth Roseville will beat Hall. I think they'll beat Rockridge. And then it seems like those are Monrose and Newman when they meet in week 9. Those are 2 teams that play very similar styles.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm looking at my Newman prediction, which we'll get into in a minute. I'm going to give it to the top. I'm going to switch my prediction. It says 8-1. I think Monrose goes undefeated.
Okay. I was going to say, I was going to go with undefeated. Well, you just typed that they were going to go 0-9. So that's not fair. That's not accurate.
True. That's not true, Monroe. I mean, no, it's true that I did that. It's not true that I think it.
So yeah, I would agree. I think that
I think that again, that game is going to be fun.
Yeah.
But I could see Monmouth Roseville having a Princeton-like performance too. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they're capable of it. And boy, an undefeated Monrose team going into the playoffs, that would be exciting.
Yeah, that would be a ton of fun. And it would be, very exciting for our area because there'll be a lot of good football from our area being played in the 3A playoffs. So, all right, should we get into the Three Rivers Rock side of things here? And we'll start with Orion. We referenced it earlier. They're sitting at 1-5 right now. So certainly an uphill battle to even get to 4 wins, which would at least get them in the playoff conversation. They'd have to have enough playoff points. They got Erie Prophetstown, Sherrard, Kewanee left. I think at best you could get 2 of those if they played really good football, but I don't see them beating Kewanee in week 9.
Yeah. They could catch EP for sure. You mentioned that you think that they'll beat Sherrard. Yeah, I would probably be right there with you. It's a tough year for Orion, and I hope that they're back in the mix next season, but won't be playoffs for this year for the Chargers. But they got weapons coming back next year.
Yep. All right, now we're getting into the 3-win teams. That's where things get really interesting. Mitch, of all the divisions, all the conferences we cover, I think these next 3 teams are maybe the most intriguing. It'd be a battle between them and the NUIC for kind of the playoff picture. Don't you think?
Just in terms of 3-3 teams?
Yeah. Maybe the NUIC edges it out, but these are some really intriguing discussions I hear.
Well, and there's only 2 3-3 teams in the NUIC, so there's certainly, I think, more jockeying to be done here.
Yep,
for sure.
I think there's just a lot of games that they're tough to predict. And that's what we're trying to do here, but they're hard. We'll start with Mercer County. Their backs are certainly against the wall here, sitting at 3-3 with a pretty tough stretch the next 2 weeks at least. Rockridge, Princeton, they end the season with Mendota. So I think we can safely predict that they could get by Mendota in week 9, but you still got to find a win against Princeton or Rock Ridge.
It has to be this week.
Yeah, I would say so too.
It would have to happen in a rivalry game, but I give the edge to Rock Ridge this week. So that would put my prediction for Murco at 4-5.
Yep. I think that I would tend to agree with you, but yeah, if they're going to get a win, if they're going to get a second win in the next 3 weeks, it's in a rivalry game against Rock Ridge. And I think that if you play a great football game in a rivalry game where the atmosphere is intense and you manage to pick up some momentum early in that game and keep it close, that'd be the way to do it. But I do think that Rock Ridge will come away with that one. We'll talk more about Rock Ridge in a minute here, but you're right. That leaves Mercer County sitting at 4-5. That leaves them most likely out of the playoffs. And that's not a place that Mercer County is sitting very often.
Thinking about it, just, Merco and Morrison, both teams in new conferences this year and maybe not getting off to the start. They're both 3-3.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. That came off the top of my head. So it's hard. It's hard to go to a new conference sometimes. So, but Merco's got a shot.
Absolutely. Yep. And they'll have to prove it, right? And that's kind of the fun in this time of year is, the battle's tough, but you got to prove yourself. And if you do, you've earned it. So, all right.
It only gets tougher after that.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Let's look at another 3-3 team, Erie Prophetstown. So team we've kind of referenced, they've been up and down this year. They've won some games. We were impressed. They lost some games that we thought, oh man, like that was an opportunity missed. But here we go. 3-3. They have Orion, Mendota, Princeton left on the schedule. So I think they get a win over Orion. They get a win over Mendota. And that leaves a tough matchup against Princeton, but you'd already be at that 5-win mark. I think there's 5 wins here. I think it's a 5-4 team. They're going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I think so too. Barring a slip up against Orion or Mendota, I think you're absolutely right.
All right. One more. And this is a great story. Riverdale is 3-3. And Mitch, we got to include it if we're talking about Riverdale. Brian Stocking called this way back at the beginning of the season. He said that Riverdale was a playoff team, and they're right in the mix. They're right in the conversation here. So let's talk about it. You got Riverdale has Newman, Hall, and Sherrard left.
Mm-hmm.
There's a path to 5 wins here. Guy Derricks could be leading the Rams to the playoffs. Am I right?
I think so. I don't think they have the firepower to take out Newman this week, but I think they match up really well against Hall, and I do think they would beat Sherrard in week 9. So yeah, that would put them at 5-4. Which again, Stocking predicted it. So all the credit to him in that. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, honestly.
When Stocking is right, we don't know what to say about it.
No, not at all. So, hey, was it a prediction made with his heart or his brain? I'm not quite sure, but either way, he was right.
Yeah, he never he always makes predictions with a certain degree of bias, and he'll never admit it, but it's there. He knows it's there. Right. So, but good for him. He got this, or he's at least. I think he's trending in the right direction and being right.
Yeah, I think I just, I wrote down in our notes here, I think that they will be sitting at 5-4.
Yep. All right, let's get into the 2 teams sitting at the top of the standings here in the Track Rock division. Rock Ridge sitting at 4-2. They got Mercer County, Monmouth, Roseville, and Hall left. Where do you see Rock Ridge Rockets here?
I think they beat Merco, as I mentioned.
Yep.
I don't think they will get past Monmouth, Roseville, and then they will beat Hall. So that would put them at 6-3 heading into the 2A playoffs.
And I think that's a pretty tough 6-3 team. That's a good 6-3 football team going into the 2A playoffs in that North Division. So, Yep. And when you look at Sterling Newman, they're 5-1 right now. Riverdale, Kewanee, Monmouth, Roseville left. I think we got to remember they go into the 1A playoffs. I think regardless of what their record is, they're going to be a very tough 1A football team. But what are we looking at here? I think we already kind of talked about Monmouth Roseville. We kind of flip-flopped a little bit on that one, but I think Monmouth Roseville, I think we'd give the edge to them in that game.
I mean, there is an argument looking at what they have left, and you know, well, we just talked about Riverdale. You could give me scenarios that Newman finishes 5-4, 6-3, 7-2, or 8-1, and I would believe every single one of those. Right?
Yeah, that's a great way to. You're right. Yep.
But I do think they'll get past Riverdale. I'm going to predict they slow that game down against Kewanee and play their type of game.
Yep.
I just think Monrose is going to do it back to them in week 9. So I'm going to put Newman comfortably at 7-2 and being a real tough out in 1A.
Yep. I would agree with that. I think that, this Newman team has continued to get better. Going back to last year, they lost in the playoffs to Roval Williamsfield. That was a great win for that Roval Williamsfield program going on the road to get that win. But I think since then, this Newman program has continued to get better. They got better in the offseason. The offense continues to make strides, and the defense is still as strong, if not stronger, than they have been. They're a well-rounded football team now. And yeah, I absolutely believe, regardless of what their record is, like we said about Rockridge, I think they're going to be a tough team to battle in that Class 1A field.
Yeah, and shout out to Daniel Kelly. He was on the Helmet Watch shortlist this week too. Big game. He had 2 interceptions, including the game-sealing pick 6. He had, I think it was 75 yards rushing. So always a fun player to watch. So another good performance from him this past week.
Yes, absolutely. Helmet Watch. And also, Mitch, when we start talking about like player of the year candidates, we don't often get player of the year candidates from the defensive side of the ball primarily. And I hate to say that, and no offense to defense, but it's just harder to track stats, and it's, the offensive numbers always get the flashy attention. But I think Daniel Kelly could be on that list of player of the year candidates in the Rock division. So
solidly in that list.
Yep. Something to watch for sure. All right, well, here we go. A couple conferences left to cover. Let's talk about the Lincoln Land Conference large school side of things. Mitch, we'll start with LVC is 0-6. So, with 2 tough matchups against Farmington and Elmwood Brimfield left. Not sure what they can do if they can get a win against Macon Meridian in a non-conference this week, but either way, they're not going to be in the playoff mix. You have West Hancock, who's put up some offensive numbers similar to what they did last year. They have Knoxville, Illini West, and Bureau Valley left. I think they could get the win this week, but I do struggle maybe against Illini West, maybe one of those two, either against Illini West or Bureau Valley. I don't see them getting both.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing I was just talking about Newman. You could make a case for them being 2-7 or 4-5, and I think I would believe it. They'd have to play the way that they just played against LBC, and Bryce Varner would have to really go off. But I've been impressed with Illini West and Bureau Valley this year, so I don't think, even at 4-5, they may not get in. But so I'll say they're going to trip up one of those games, and it wouldn't matter. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't believe the Titans will be in the playoffs this year.
All right. Well, let's get into some. Another one of the intriguing 3-3 teams. You have 2 3-3 teams here. We'll start with Illini West.
Yep.
They have Bureau Valley, West Hancock, and Tuscola left on the schedule. This Bureau Valley game to start, and we might as well talk about Bureau Valley as well, because we're going to discuss them right away. Bureau Valley has Illini West this week, who's 3-3, like we said. They have Macomb and they have West Hancock.
Yep.
So what do you think here? You say you have your prediction written down here. How do you think this plays out?
Yeah, so I think Illini West will win this game against Bureau Valley. And I don't know a whole lot about Tuscola. I think they're fine.
Yeah, I can look, but I think they're middle of the road. They're not a.
I think they're sitting at 4-2. I think.
Okay.
Either way, I will put Illini West in at 5-4, with this game against Bureau Valley being kind of the deciding factor, which would put Bureau Valley at 4-5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go reverse. I'm gonna say Bureau
Okay.
Valley gets the win against Illini West this week, and I think that's a crucial game, obviously for both teams. I think Bureau Valley gets the win over Illini West. I think they fall to Macomb, but I think Bureau
Mhm.
Valley gets the win over West Hancock. So that puts them at
Okay.
5-4. I think
They-
Coach Pistol and the Storm are going to be a playoff team this year.
They played really well against Elmwood Brimfield. It came down to the very last play. So yeah, they're played really, really well this season and certainly last week despite the loss.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at Tuscola real quick. When you talk about Illini West, they got Bureau Valley, West Hancock, and Tuscola in a non-conference game. Illini West will go on the road for that one. Tuscola's sitting at 3-3. They're
Okay.
out of the heart of Central Illinois Conference. I don't know that they've played the strongest schedule. I think Illini West has maybe been a little more battle tested.
Mhm.
Tuscola fell to Leroy on the road 57-7. Leroy's a very good 1A program. They lost 34-7 to Gibson City Melvin Sibley, who's also a good 1A program. But their wins have come against Macon Meridian, who we just referenced, Fisher, who's struggling, Central A&M, they got to win 18-13. I just think overall, I don't know that Tuscola is a great program. Overall, I don't know they've been battle tested. So I think
maybe I'll switch them to 6-3. I could see it.
Yeah, I would say that
Or they're 5-4 and Bureau Valley's 5-4.
that's what I say is going to happen. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You read my mind. Right what I was going to say. I think they both finish at 5-4. So,
Okay.
All right. Should we keep climbing up the standings here? We got two teams sitting at 5-1 who play each other this week. So another good pairings matchup here. Elmwood Brimfield plays Macomb. So Elmwood Brimfield has Macomb this week, A-Town, and LVC. Macomb has Elmwood Brimfield, Bureau Valley, and Havana. So I think right at the outset of this game, Macomb competed much better against Elmwood Brimfield than Farmington did. That's obvious. The score was much closer. I still want to see. I still think Elmwood Brimfield could get this win at Macomb. Right? Is it at Macomb? I don't know where. I shouldn't say that. I don't know where it's at. But
once again, Greg, it's at one of those two schools.
yes. Well, we probably have it in the notes, Mitch. I should just look up and find it. But so it is. Macomb is at Elmwood Brimfield. With
Okay.
Elmwood Brimfield being at home, I might lean them. It'd be, being based on comparative scores might be considered an upset because Macomb looked really good last week, but I could see that happening.
Okay. I'm going to give the edge to.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to give the edge to Macomb this week.
Yeah.
I was impressed in how they've not only played all year, but how they certainly played against what I think is one of the best teams in 2A in Farmington. So yes, I'm going to give the nod to Macomb here, and then I think both of those teams will win their weeks 8 and 9 games. So that would have me saying Elmwood Brimfield goes 7-2, Macomb going 8-1. Either way, whatever happens this week, I think both of these schools will go to the playoffs.
Yep, I think both these teams are going to be the playoffs. I'm right there with you. Both teams will be in. I could see it being an Elmwood Brimfield team sitting at 8-1. We'll see. And then Macomb would clearly then have the 7-2 record. But either way, two very solid programs that are going to be playoff bound. And then Farmington. They have Anawan Wethersfield, LVC, and Knoxville left. Mitch, are they going to run the table?
Yeah, I don't have much hesitation when saying that. Anawan Wethersfield could give them, some trouble. We talked about how good their defense is, but I don't know that they've played anything like Farmington's offense. So, or Farmington's defense for that matter. So, yeah, I think I'm comfortable with saying that the Farmers will be 9-0.
All right, there we have it. Let's get into the LLC small school side of things. Here's what's left. Let's start down near the lower end of the standings. Unfortunately for United, they've struggled this year. They got South Fulton, Havana, and Stark County. There's a couple winnable games there, but either way, I think that 2 wins is probably the most I see out of United here.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right. Havana has A-Town, United, and Macomb. Again, I think you could get 2. You could get to like 3 and 5, but I think in the week 9, you probably fall to 3 and 6.
Yeah, I'm going to say Havana finishes 2 and 7.
Yep. What about A-Town? A-Town is sitting at 2 and 4. They have Havana, Elmwood, Brimfield, and Rova Williamsfield. You thought when we were just talking about Havana, you think they get the win this week?
I think A-Town beats Havana. I don't see them beating Elmwood Brimfield. And then that Rova Williamsfield game, I think will be tough. I'm going to give the edge to the Cougars there. So that puts me giving A-Town a 3 and 6 record.
All right. Yep. I would agree with that. All right. Let's get to our 3 and 3 team. That would be Rova Williamsfield, who we just referenced. They have Rushville Industry this week, Anawan Wethersfield, and then A-Town. So an interesting path for them. I think that there's a shot here that they could get 5. If you get, I mean, this week is interesting though, because it's a 5-1 Rushville Industry team, but maybe they haven't been tested as much.
Yeah, I just switched my prediction on this, and it's possible that I didn't fix it in the first place. But I've been impressed with Rushville Industry this year. I think they will beat Rova Williamsfield this week. The way Anawan Wethersfield's been playing on defense and kind of this resurgence on offense, I like how they're playing. So that would already put Rova Williamsfield at 3 and 5. I just mentioned with A-Town, I think Rova Williamsfield would win that game. So that would put them at 4 and 5, but not out of the picture at 4 and 5, I don't think, in 1A.
Mitch, I'm going to say this Rova Williamsfield team, I think they get one or the other. They're either going to knock off Rushville Industry or they're going to beat Anawan Wethersfield. I don't know that they'll get both of them in back-to-back weeks, but I think they get one of those, and I think they also beat A-Town. I think they end up at 5 and 4.
Okay. I can see it.
Yep. Well, speaking of teams in that mix, you have Anawan Wethersfield. They got Farmington this week. Then they have Rova Williamsfield and Princeville. So pretty tough stretch. They've played well so far. They've gotten to 4 and 2. I think we thought this was a team that had potential to be like undefeated at this point in the season, but they're sitting at 4 and 2. This is a tough slate for them left.
Yeah, and definitely some injury concerns that there are reasons why they are not sitting at 6-0 or 5-1. But I don't see them getting past Farmington this week, as I mentioned. I will give them the nod over Rova Williamsfield. And I'm going to say Princeville wins that week 9 game. So that would put me with Anawan Wethersfield at 5 and 4, but in the playoffs.
Yep. Mitch, I'm going to say the same thing I just said about Rova Williamsfield. Don't you think in a scenario where Anawan Wethersfield could win one or the other, they could beat Rova Williamsfield or Princeville?
Yeah.
Maybe not both of them.
Yeah.
I think that's possible. So I think that they could get to that 5th win. I don't see the Farmington game, but I think that one or the other, I think they could get one of those games. So I think we'll learn a lot this week, like we've talked about earlier in the show, about Princeville when they go up against Stark County this week. Then we may have a little bit more insight on how Anawan Wethersfield stacks up against Princeville. I think we'll learn more about that this week. So, all right. What else? We got a couple more teams here. The top teams in the conference. You got Rushville Industry at 5-1, winners of 5 in a row. They lost to Stark County in week 1. They've rolled off 5 straight. They got Rova Williamsfield, Princeville, and South Fulton.
I have them at 7-2 here with wins over Rova Williamsfield and South Fulton. I'll give Princeville the edge there. There's a path for 8-1 for Rushville Industry, which would be a pretty special season. I'm going to say they drop one in there and we'll finish 7-2.
Yeah. I like Rushville Industry over Princeville. We'll talk about Princeville in a minute.
Okay.
I think I like Rushville Industry in that matchup. So if we're looking at, I think that maybe they get 2 more. So they're sitting at 7 wins.
Yep. That's what I said, 7-2. Yep.
Okay. There's a chance. I'm not, I feel like I'm waffling on a lot of things, but I just think there's several different options. Like you've said, there's several different outlooks that I could be convinced of. One of which would be that Rushville Industry runs the table, Like it's not out of the realm of possibility, but we'll learn again. We'll learn a lot more this week when Rushville Industry plays ROWVA Williamsfield. We'll see where it all shakes out after this week 7 matchup. Let's talk about the 2 undefeated teams, Mitch. Princeville and Stark County meet up this week. So 6-0 versus 6-0. Princeville's got, after this, Rushville Industry and Anawan Wethersfield. Stark County in week 8 and 9 has South Fulton and United. So 2 kind of contrasting schedules remaining. Princeville has the tougher draw here down the stretch.
Yeah. Like I said before, I don't think Princeville's played a lot of good competition yet. And they snuck by Havana, which still doesn't make sense to me. I will say that they are going to drop 2 of these last 3. I think Stark County is going to win this week. And I can't remember if I might have said that Rushville Industry was going to lose that to Princeville. So I'm going to say, I still see 2 losses in here. So I don't know where it's going to come. I don't know if it's going to come with Rushville Industry or Anawan Wethersfield, but I'm going to say Princeville's going to finish at 7-2.
I would totally agree with that. I'm right in lockstep with that. I think that's what I see as most likely. And again, I think what's fun about this time of year is, Princeville fans, Princeville players, coaches who listen to this, and maybe they don't like to hear that, but here's your chance to go prove it, right? Prove us wrong. I would love to see, if they run the table, it's great. I want to see them go into the playoffs undefeated potentially. So speaking of going undefeated, I think that when you look at Stark County's remaining schedule, this game against Princeville will be the big one. Then you got games against South Fulton and United. I think 9-0 is it's clear. It's a very doable benchmark here.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I give the Rebels the edge here against Princeville this week, and then truthfully, they should not be challenged too much against South Fulton or United. So for the second year in a row, I think Stark County will be undefeated heading into the 1A playoffs.
Yep. And, we're putting now, Jade Nord said a couple weeks ago, Mitch, when you called out that you thought they had a path to 9-0, and Coach Nord texted me and said, "Oh, way to go. You're going to jinx us now," or, whatever. But no jinx, no jinx so far.
I mean, I say teams are going to win. I say teams are going to lose. I'm just in a bad spot everywhere. I can't, J's or Pete's.
That's right. You get in trouble if you say they're going to lose. You get in trouble if you say they're going to win.
Yeah. No. How about you tie then, Coach Nord? How about that? All right.
All right. I'm sure he loves hearing. It's probably much better hearing that, I suppose. So
listen, make it to state so I can go. All right. There's your bulletin board material.
That's a call to all teams, right? Really? I mean, but yeah, absolutely.
We should just go. We should just go anyway.
I think that's on my radar. Yeah, absolutely.
We got passes.
Absolutely. I'll shoot high school football video of any school. Doesn't matter to me. So,
and Mitch, just they could use it.
Mitch, how fun will it be if we can relive our glory days where you have a reporter notebook in hand and you're logging notes for me, just like the old days?
I'm not doing any of that.
Don't tell you're gonna have to walk the sideline with me. I'm not gonna let you sit in the press box.
No, I'll walk the sideline with you, but it'll be too cold, and I'm not gonna be writing with a pen that doesn't work and bare hands. No.
Oh, listen to this guy. Can't go back to his intern roots anymore. He's too big time.
The technology's too it's too advanced anymore for me. So no, I'll walk the sideline with you, but I'm not writing anything down.
All right.
Who are you going to be editing it for? Who are you going to be editing it for? If we're not covering a team, who are you going to be editing it for?
We'll put it on our site. We'll put it on our YouTube channel and promote it. So Now, what we really need to make happen is we need to get the McRib from McDonald's back on the menu in time for the high school football playoffs. Because then that would really
that's a cause we can all get behind.
That would really be getting back to the glory days of Greg and Mitch going to high school football games. So,
yep.
The View from the West Player of the Week is brought to you by Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. You can check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com.
This is Dan Pearson of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Our FCA team of staff, board, and volunteers is pleased to support View from the West with Greg and Mitch. Our Northwest Illinois FCA team is 3 teams in 1, serving coaches and athletes in the Three Rivers, Northern Illinois, and Greater Peoria areas, all with schools covered by View from the West. For more information, email me at danpearson@fca.org. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
The Quad City's first and only fantasy football show, For Fantasy's Sake, has you all covered when it comes to all of your fantasy football needs. The guys come to you live every Sunday morning during the football season from 10 to 11:30. They've got the best analysis, rankings, DFS, and gambling advice between the Rock and Mississippi Rivers. So tune into For Fantasy's Sake every Sunday during the football season from 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
Hey, this is Brett Bielma, the head coach of the Fighting Illini from Prophetstown, Illinois. You're listening to the View from the West podcast.
One more conference here to cover, and then maybe we'll take a quick look around the state at some teams that are catching our eye. What's left in the NUIC? Mitch, that's a loaded question. There's a lot left in the NUIC.
Well, there's a lot left. And again, like we kind of mentioned before, there's some teams that we haven't talked about having playoff hopes the past couple of years. And there's teams that have been playoff, staples for years that aren't going to make it. So Start right off the bat. Dakota at 0-6 and Forreston at 1-5. Even if I with what Forreston's got left with Southwestern, which I think they'll beat, but then you got to finish with Dupec and Lee Win. Even if if you had 3 different opponents and got to 4 and 5, it would be a battle to get in. But when you've still got Dupec and Lee Win on your schedule, it's just not going to happen. So tough years for Dakota and Forreston. I don't see how at all that they will be in the postseason, unfortunately.
So moving up the standings here, you then look at Fulton, who's sitting at 2-4. Mitch, in week 1, going way back to week 1, I covered Forreston at Fulton, and then I covered Lena Winslow at Morrison. And I remember promoting that week of those games. I remember talking to you on the podcast and saying, I'm excited to go see what I think are going to be 4 playoff teams. I felt pretty good about that at the time. And now you look back and you think that's not going to happen. I mean, we're going to get one of those. Lena Winslow's a playoff team. And the other 3, they're on the outside looking in. We'll get into it.
I don't have them. I don't have them getting in. So let's start with Fulton. They're sitting at 2-4. They've got Dupec, Knoxville, and Morrison left. I expect Dupec to bounce back this week, coming off that big loss to Lee Win. I do think Fulton will take care of Knoxville. And then I have them beating Morrison as well. That would put them at 4 and 5, which again doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to make the playoffs, but it'll have to come down to that final hour of the playoff pairings to see if they sneak in.
So So I think that Morrison Fulton game is a toss up, and we referenced it a few weeks ago, and I thought that maybe that game would be for a potential 5th win. But you're right, the way it's kind of shaking out, I think that for both of those schools, it might be for a potential 4th win. Let's keep looking down the way here. We'll get into Morrison right now. Then they have Stockton. They're sitting at 3-3. They have Stockton Eastland Pearl City, and Fulton left. It's kind of what we've talked about earlier. I could see them getting one win, either Stockton or Eastland Pearl City. I don't think I see them getting both.
Yeah.
So
Truth be told,
what do you think here?
Truth be told, to my Mustang friends, I don't see it any of the 3 weeks. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I know they're banged up. Been super impressed with Stockton, super impressed with Eastern Pearl City. The Wooden Shoe Bowl in week 9, anything can happen. I just gave the edge to Fulton a second ago, so I'm gonna stick with that. So yeah, I just don't see it. I think Morrison will finish at 3-6.
I'm kind of flip-flopping back and forth. I could see it going either way between Fulton and Morrison, like you referenced, but either way, I think both of these teams are gonna fall short of the playoffs. I don't know playoff points exactly right now, but I don't know if four wins will be enough to get in. So it's crazy because it's not what I expected here. So let's look at some teams, on the positive side of things that have surprised us, and they're definitely in the playoff mix here. How about Stockton? We'll start there, 3-3 with Morrison, Dakota, and Galena left. Mitch, I think it's a good chance they could run the table here.
I think so. That's what I've got them at. I think they will beat Morrison. I think they'll definitely beat Dakota. Galena's kind of that toss-up game, but I'm just going to give it to Stockton in week 9. And 6-3 getting into the playoffs, back into the mix.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk about the team you just referenced in Galena. They're sitting at 4-2 right now. Dakota, Lee Win, and Stockton left on the schedule. So based on what you just said, I think that we would safely predict they beat Dakota, they fall to Lee Win, and then they fall to Stockton to end up at 5-4.
Yeah, I think that. So they're sitting 4-2. Obviously they had a nice win over Fulton this past week. I think they'll get their 5th win this week against Dakota. But I'm still gonna. Maybe I'm giving Stockton too much credit. I don't know, but I think they're gonna win that week 9 game. So I'll put Galena right there at 5-4.
I'm looking at when you start looking at it's hard to compare, results. You never know. So Stockton lost to Eastland Pearl City 34-8. Yep. And if I remember, it was a pretty convincing win from EPC, correct?
Yep.
And when you start looking at then Galena went up against Eastland Pearl City in week 1, they lost 22-6, but I feel like that game was a little more competitive. So hard to compare scores, but
hard to compare scores and hard to compare a week 1 matchup, I guess.
That's true. Yeah, that's fair.
But
I might give the edge. Might give the edge to Galena there. Yeah.
Okay. And that's perfectly fair. I think that Galena will be beat up having playing Lena Winslow in week 8.
That's a fair point. Yep, that's fair. So
that Stockton will have a relatively clean game against Dakota.
Yeah, I can see that. I think Galena ends up with 6 wins. I think Stockton ends up with 5 wins. I think both are in the playoffs. Okay. Either way we're talking about it, you flip-flop it either way. Both those teams are going to be in the playoff mix.
Yep.
So team we referenced there, Eastland Pearl City. They're sitting at 5-1. They got Lee Win, Morrison, and Dakota left.
Yep.
I think that's a 7-2 record at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy prediction of 7-2. I don't think they'll get past Lee Win, but they shouldn't have any problem with Morrison or Dakota. So shout out to the Cats getting to 7-2. Great season.
I was going to say, shout out to that program because they're a program that hadn't been kind of in this conversation this late in the year, and so they're one of the teams that's kind of flipped that script on us, right? Because if Forreston and we're talking about Fulton potentially, and now Morrison not in the mix, you got to talk about who's in, and that's been Eastland Pearl City, Galena, Stockton, kind of moving up the charts. That's exciting. That's exciting for those communities. It's exciting for our talking points to have some different names coming in the mix. Am I right?
I was just going back. I mean, they had a stretch there, man, from 03 to
Oh yeah,
2018 that they didn't miss the playoffs. So
yep.
This will be their first time getting back in since the 2018-2019 season, where they went 12-1. So
yeah,
good for Coach McNutt and getting this team back in the playoff mix.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, a team certainly in the playoff mix for the past few years, Dupec. They're sitting at 5-1 right now. They lost that, tough matchup to Lena Winslow. They got Fulton, Forreston, and Seneca left. Tough matchup against Seneca, who's an undefeated team in Class 2A. Really good squad that we saw last year go up against Rockridge in the playoffs. Where do you think Dupec ends up here, Mitch? I think we get 2 wins when you're talking Fulton and Forreston.
Yep, I think so. I think they'll bounce back against Fulton this week. They'll take care of Forreston, and then I'll give Seneca the edge in that game. But Dupec being 7-2, I think they'll be able to last a couple weeks in 3A postseason, depending on where they shake out. They could make another run like they did last year.
Yep. We'll talk a little bit about teams in 3A to kind of watch out for. All right, but Mitch, give us the rundown on the teams we think are going to be in the playoffs then from the Northwest Upstate Illini.
So that would, and I think we differ here
a little bit. Yeah.
I think you said Fulton was going to get in, but I think we are solid on Galena, Eastland Pearl City, Lee Win, Dupec, and Stockton. So that would put us at 5.
Yeah. No, I think Fulton would get to potentially 4 wins, but I don't think they'd be in the playoff mix.
Or maybe we were flip flopping Dakota and Stockton, or I'm sorry, Galena and Stockton. But either way, they're in. So that would put
exactly
in 5.
Yep. Well, there we go. Mitch, before we wrap up this episode, I wanted to kind of take a look around the state of Illinois, just kind of what teams we should keep on our radar, teams from either the southern half of the state that we think are going to have an impact in the playoffs, or teams that are going to be in the north that we just, not in our conference, but teams from our area are going to run into. I think we got to talk about the Western Illinois Valley. There's a lot of good programs down there, and they're kind of battling back and forth. We've been following along. So you and I submit our poll, our rankings every week to NUICfootball.com. Kyle does a great job of compiling some rankings. We might pull those up, kind of talk through some teams that we're ranking week in and week out. But a couple interesting things to follow along with this week. Greenfield Northwestern. This would be in the Western Illinois Valley South Division. Greenfield Northwestern sitting at 5-1, going up against Carrollton. That's at Carrollton, who's also 5-1. So Carrollton just knocked off Calhoun, who was undefeated at the time, playing really good football. So that's kind of an interesting matchup there. And I think a lot will be sorted out. But you look over on the WIVC North Division, Camp Point Central, one of the teams we've talked about going into this year, really highly touted team, the defending state champions. They lost earlier this year to Calhoun, who we referenced. Did you see their game against Route this past week, the end of it?
Yeah. Was it 22-21 or 23-22, something like that?
Yeah, it was a 1-point finish. Route had a field goal at the end of regulation that was good, that was waved off by an offensive penalty. They had to re-kick, and they missed the kick. So, man, heartbreaker for Route.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just such a brutal, tough way to lose when you think you've knocked off a team like Camp Point Central.
Right.
But either way, Route's a good team this year. Camp Point Central's good. And again, Calhoun, Greenfield, Northwestern, a lot of good teams that are going to be represented in that southern half of the bracket that, are teams to watch for in Class 1A in particular, maybe some slip up into 2A.
Yep.
When you start looking at some of the bigger schools, the 2A, 3A schools here, Illini Prairie Conference, if you follow along with them, they got some teams. This team's coming out of the Illini Prairie, they're battle tested. Yep. Most of them will go south, but some will stay up north. I think the one is it Prairie Central? They've gone to the north side of the bracket a few times. But the main powerhouses here in Bloomington Central Catholic, they went to the northern bracket this past year. Could be back there again. You look at some of the powerhouses around this conference. St. Joe Ogden, they're 6-0. They should roll past Pontiac this week. But you also have Paxton Buckley Loda, who's 6-0, going on the road to Monticello, who's 5-1. Both of those teams have wins over Bloomington Central Catholic, who's now 3-3. But when you look at Bloomington Central Catholic's schedule, I think they run the table. I think they end up at 6-3, and they're going to be a battle-tested, really good 6-3 team going into the playoffs. They'll end up in 2A. That's where they ended up last year, more than likely.
Tolono?
No, Bloomington Central Catholic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So yes, they were 2A. I think they'll be back there. They've been teetering between 1A and 2A, I think, with this year's projections, which I did not want to see them in 1A North. So I hope that holds and they remain in 2A.
Yeah, I was just going to take a quick look at the brackets a year ago. They were, Bloomington Central Catholic was a 3 seed on the northern side of things. And they
beat Rock Ridge, right?
They beat Farmington in round 2. And then they lost to Maroa Forsyth in the quarterfinals. Rock Ridge lost to Seneca last year. Yep. And Seneca's another team in that 2A bracket that they're 6-0. Again, I said it last year. I'll say it again. It didn't hold up. I don't think they play that tough of a schedule. But I thought that last year too. And they proved to be a very good football team. They run a real tight, like wing tee, like old school. So they're kind of tough. They really do some good, deception with who's got the ball, who's running it out of the backfield. So they're a tough team to defend, but we'll see. They're another team to watch for. But wrapping up the Illini Prairie Conference, Tolono Unity, they're a battle-tested 3-3. They have Rantoul, Paxton Buckley Loda, and Monticello left. They may not get to 5. They'd get to 4 wins. According to Kyle Kampmeyer, he doesn't know if they'd quite have, at this point, they have 31 playoff points. He doesn't know if that currently sits as enough. That'd be on the lower end of 4 and 5 teams getting in. So it's crazy to me that this Tolono Unity team will end with a battle-tested schedule, and they may not make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's the tough part of this year, and I guess that would be something that you would advocate for when you're talking about expanding the playoffs to 900 teams as a reason to get them in. But it's also maybe advocating to keep the amount of teams that we have in and doing it more on a strength of schedule type of basis. So yeah.
Mitch, do you want to talk about the Big Northern at all? I know it's kind of one team that really kind of carries the headlines, at least for what we're looking out for.
Yeah, I mean, if you are looking for a good game to watch, I think it's week 8. Byron and Dixon will play.
Yeah.
But I think Byron is the resounding favorite in 3A this year for any reason you can think of. They're just so talented, and they've been winning games big without their best running back, and he's coming back in week 8, I think. So yeah, I think it's Byron's world in 3A. I just hope that our local teams may not run into them as quickly as we have in years past.
Yeah. So you're talking about, Byron and Dixon. Dixon will end up in 4A. So that potentially would be a matchup with a team like Kewanee if Kewanee makes the playoffs. But we don't usually end up with a lot of teams in 4A.
What's IC Catholic doing this year?
IC Catholic, I believe. Let's do you're catching me. Let's see.
I got it pulled up.
All
right. They show 2 and 3. I don't know what they did this past week, but I mean that's again a team that you can never count out. And they always kind of teeter between 3A and 4A too. So I don't know where they would shake up, even if they do get in. But looks like they've got some 7A and 8A teams left on their schedule. So
IC Catholic is sitting at 2 and 4.
Ooh, boy.
They won their first 2 and they lost 4 in a row now. So
to St. Ignatius, Nazareth, and Marist.
Well, absolutely, I know, but
and we in St. Francis.
So they still have Marmion, who's 4-2, who's over 1,000 enrollment. They have St. Viator, who's 3-3, who's at 800 enrollment, and they have St. Rita, who's ranked number 4 in Class 7A.
Yeah,
obviously over 1,000 enrollment. They're sitting at 4-2 right now, and obviously, like I said, ranked. So that's a tough stretch for them. So we may not be talking about IC Catholic in the postseason. I think a team that we have been ranking, speaking of Catholic private schools up that way, Montini Catholic is sitting at 4-2. They're up at number 2 right now in our NUICfootball.com polls. They've looked really good. They'll be a team in 3A to battle. Kyle from NUIC football mentioned he thinks it's Byron and Montini up there. That's a battle up in the north. Obviously, from our point of view, we'll have Monmouth Roseville in that mix, Princeton in that mix, Dupec will be somewhere in that mix. So those are some of the teams there. We referenced a few other ones there. I think we've referenced kind of everybody in 3A. Looking at Class 2A, how about Mitch? How about Quincy Notre Dame?
Yeah.
They're a team.
I mean, they're going to be good.
Yeah, they're sitting at 5-1 right now. They're going to be in Class 2A.
With their only loss to Quincy.
I was just going to say, their only loss to Quincy. They got a win over Sacred Heart Griffin, a convincing win, 37-7. And then this past week, they put up 77 points against the Lanphier team out of Springfield. So, and they're going to drop down to 2A. So
they're going to be tough.
Yeah, that's a team definitely.
Hopefully they stay in the South.
Well, that'll be interesting, right? To see where they fall, whether they're South or North. So, Eastland Pearl City will be in that mix, like we've talked about. Downstry Valley sitting at 5-1 right now. They're ranked number 4 in our 2A poll. Maroa Forsyth is 6-0. They've gone both. They've been north once in a while, but they're usually in the southern half of the bracket. So they look to kind of lead the way down there. Obviously, from our area, Farmington will be in that mix. Chicago Christian is a team to watch out for. They're out of Chicago area. They're 5-1. They play kind of a schedule that's hard to gauge how they fit into this 2A bracket. But right now they're, number 7 in the 2A polls. So a couple teams we've referenced from Class 1A already.
Don't forget Wilmington.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
I think they're getting ranked in 3A at the moment. I think they're going to drop back down to 2. They're the defending champs. So.
Yep. Good call. We'll go through quickly here in Class 1A before we wrap it up. Althoff Catholic is currently ranked number 1 in the NUICfootball.com poll. They're ranked just above Lena Winslow. They're at 6-0. Again, they play a very different schedule than what a lot of these 1A schools play. Last year, Camp Point Central pulled off a perfect game against them to beat them. It would take somebody's perfect effort, a really good, well-executed game to beat them this year. I think they're one of the favorites in Class 1A.
And they play Caneland in week 9, and Caneland's got an enrollment of like 1,300.
And that's an interesting matchup because, Caneland's always a very good football team up in that northern half of the state, up by Rockford area. So certainly a team to watch. In other teams in Class 1A, Leroy is 6-0. We've referenced Calhoun, Gibson City, Melvin Sibley. We talked about it 6-0. Greenfield Northwestern. We talked about Casey Westfield out of the eastern side of the state. They're at 6-0 right now. Rockford Lutheran out of the Big Northern. They'll fall into Class 1A. They're 4-2 right now. I don't know. I would say they're battle tested in the Big Northern because it's a bigger, 3A kind of conference. I don't know if the Big Northern is quite as strong as it has been in years past. But either way, I just think that Rockford Lutheran is used to a little bit different style of football. We'll see if that pays dividends. Doesn't always work that way, but
Right.
Any other teams, Mitch, to reference here? I think we've covered about everybody.
So. That covers it. So, I mean, look, I think we just went through it all. With West left, it's still hard to believe that there's only 3 regular season games left.
I know.
then we'll have to be talking about some of these teams we just went through from around the state, and see who matches up with our local teams. So this is the exciting part of the year. We could see some conference crowns determined this week. Could see shares get taken. And boy, it's gonna be fun these last 3 weeks. If you've made it this far in the podcast and you listen to our predictions, there's a lot to shake out, and that'll be fun to watch.
Yep. So the only thing remaining here, Mitch, is where am I going this week? I kind of got my eyes on like Mercer County, Rock Ridge, huge rivalry renewed. That county line clash is interesting to me. Maybe like a Roval Williams Field hosting Rushville Industry. Could be a good battle there.
You got to go to one or two.
Yeah, usually we'd end up going to 2 games. It depends, Man, if I could stay at Mercer County, Rock Ridge the whole time, that might be kind of fun. But, that'd be a question for the higher ups at Channel 8, at WQAD, the big timers, like Matt Randazzo. Here's the thing. The matchups I would really love to go to, they're outside of the Quad Cities area. So
can you get to Sherrard and Rock Ridge in the same night? You can do that.
Yeah, easily. Yep, we could do that.
Yeah, that's probably the 2, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
Prophetstown to Sterling, you could potentially do.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to go to Sterling first. So yeah, there's options. The easiest is probably going to Kewanee at Sherrard and then going to Mercer County, Rock Ridge.
I do like that. What I was going to say is that what's tough is a lot of our games I would want to go to Anawan Wethersfield at Farmington or Stark County at Princeville. Those will be those are more in the Peoria TV market, so they'll probably cover those games. So WQAD won't be sending anybody that far out. Those are games I would love to go to, but probably just a little far out of our viewing area. We'll get highlights of them. But
you could, if you were going to cover the NUIC, you could probably get Lanark and Stockton in one trip.
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah. I wasn't thinking about Eastland Pearl City. They host Lee Win, and then okay. All right, so there you go. There's some potential there. All right, Mitch.
Yeah, hey. Go see that beautiful field there in Stockton under the lights.
That would be great. I've been there during playoff time. I don't think I've been there on a Friday night. So there's, maybe a first, but
there you go.
All right. Well, we'll get back at it. Thank you to everyone who listens. One more plug, go out and check out the View from the West online store. The link is available right now in this podcast description, or you can find it as the pin post on our X account. Go out and check out the shirts, check out the hoodies, the hats, the quarter zips, all the good stuff. Find something you like. Make sure you get it. Store closes Sunday, October 13th. So this will wrap it up, Mitch. We'll be back again talking Friday night. We'll react to all things from week 7. And, maybe we'll see how close our predictions were here.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep these notes up. And then when we start talking playoff, that first round of playoff show, I'll tally these up and see how we did.
All right. That sounds good. Well, Mitch, thanks as always. Thanks to everyone who listens, and stay tuned. It's only getting more exciting as we go. We'll see you on Friday night for the Instant Reacts podcast. That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.